Welcome back to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast. I'm Michael Camber, relationship and recovery coach and founder of Restoration Soul Care, private coaching practice that I founded to help men, women, families, couples overcome things like a pornography addiction. Today, we're diving back into our series, free ebook that I created to help you dip your toes into the realm of emotions. And today, we are talking about fear. That book is called 5 Emotions That Keep You Stuck in Pornography. And today we're talking about fear. Fear is a common emotion or feeling that everybody feels, but we often mislabel it. We certainly ignore it sometimes, and then we don't really do what we need to with it. So, because here's the reality, most of us don't really know or admit that we're afraid when we really are. Oftentimes, as men, we say things like we're just overthinking or just stressed out or there's just a lot going on. Really, all those words are just masking what we're actually experiencing, which is fear. Here's what you need to know. Fear's not actually weakness. It's actually your nervous system doing exactly what God created it to do. And the real issue is it's not how we run from fear. It's how we suppress it, or we overcompensate for it, or we let it just sort of quietly control every part of our lives. So here's the question I want to ask you. What if fear isn't the enemy? What if fear is actually the thing that's trying to help you? It's trying to tell you where you need to trust more deeply, you need more connection, and even need God. That's what I believe the invitation is from fear. So to define what fear is, this is how I would define it. Fear is this feeling that tells us that we're in danger, either physically or emotionally, relationally, spiritually. Sometimes it's accurate, and sometimes it's exaggerated. But the key thing to remember is that it's never meaningless. It's never benign. Like, we're always experiencing fear for a reason. And here's what fear can look like. It can look like overthinking. You're looping through your thoughts over and over again, trying to control the outcome, playing out conversations and scenarios in your mind, just trying to figure out a way forward. It can feel like indecision. It can come off as like procrastination, or like we're just quote unquote waiting for clarity on something before we do something. It can feel like micromanaging, needing to control every single little detail because we don't feel safe, and we tell ourselves, well, I can create safety if I control this, 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 and this, and that doesn't really work. And how this shows up in the body is tension, and that, again, that could be in your chest, your shoulders, your gut, your jaw. And I'm going to ask you that same question that I've been asking. Where do you notice fear in your body? Where do you feel that show up? Is it in your chest, in your jaw? Does it feel like a knot in your stomach, or a pain in your gut, or tension in your lower back? I've often experienced this as shallow breath. Like my breath gets shallow. Like I just realize I'm not breathing deeply. My chest will get tight. My jaw does clench and get tight. It can also show up as like jitteriness, or like my knees constantly bouncing. And it can put me in this hyper aware state. Like I'm just looking for things that could go wrong. And I'm just in this perpetual protect space. And here's what my fear is actually saying. This is what fear is actually saying. I don't feel safe. I don't know what's coming. And I don't trust anyone to help me. And we've talked about trust a lot. That's going to be a key theme that we come back to, because feelings are in service of our needs. Needs are in service of keeping us in relationship. And you can't be in relationship if you don't trust. So some of our core relational needs that I've noticed that fear feels tied to for me, and you can ask these questions of yourself, and just spend some time reflecting and see what comes up. And those 5 core needs, again, are safety, significance, competence, affirmation, and control. So safety is a big one that comes up for me. When I'm afraid, when I'm anxious, I feel unsafe, and I need to create safety. Control is another big one. If I don't feel like I have an appropriate amount of control over the situation, or there's too much that's out of control, I will experience anxiety. I feel like my shoulders go up and try to like high five my ears. They can't. It doesn't work, but that's going to solve anything. But that's a part of my body that's saying, hey, pay attention. We're tense. We're afraid. So ask yourself, what do you need when you experience fear? Because fear it's sort of like an alarm. You can smash the alarm off button or unplug it. It doesn't actually make you feel safer. You just stop noticing the danger until, frankly, it just sort of bounces around and eats you alive. One way that I've been illustrating this is thinking of it like a rogue pinball. If you've ever played pinball in a real pinball machine, if that ball gets going between stuff, it just bounces around like crazy. It's hitting stuff. And that's kind of what that can feel like internally if we don't attend to it. And the Voice of the Heart book by Chip Dodd says that fear is the feeling that allows us to experience hope, wisdom, and risk. And we have to be able to experience hope, because if we don't, we don't use our God-given imagination, and we don't develop the capacity to imagine something different outside of this fear, something forward. Wisdom, that's when we take the feeling from our body, that the physiological response, up to our brain, and we process that logically, and that can help create wisdom. If we divorce our brain from that, that can create danger, because our head's not involved. It's not, it takes our thinky parts offline. And it helps us to assess risk. And risk is important because all trust takes risk. And if you are unclear about the risk that you're about to take, then that can cause problems with you assessing that. And one way that I define risk is intentionally or deliberately exposing yourself to potential harm or potential hurt. And if you think about, like it goes back to Genesis. I'm going to talk about Jesus in just a second, but thinking back to Genesis, that's sort of what happens in the garden when Adam and Eve, it says they were naked and unashamed. There was no shame. They felt free. There wasn't any risk of being harmed and hurt yet because sin had not entered the world. So Adam was free to be naked and vulnerable with Eve, trusting fully, not questioning for a second that she was going to hurt him. And this is sort of like a crass way I use to demonstrate this. It's like being naked and unafraid is saying, like, hey, I know you can see my sensitive parts. I know you can see my genitals. I'm trusting that you're not going to kick me. That's risk assessment, and that's ultimate trust. I know you can see my vulnerable parts, whether that's emotionally, relationally, spiritually, sexually. I'm trusting you to not hurt me. So that's where this comes from. So thinking about how this shows up with Jesus, Jesus did feel fear. He was afraid. And I want to, again, say this again very clearly. Being afraid is not sin. It's not sin. The night before he was arrested, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. And man, this is just such a soul-wrenching scene that plays out. It was pure vulnerability on Jesus's part. He's shaking. He's sweating blood. He's begging the Father for another way out that's not through the cross, that's not through the pain. He's not like performing this for us to show us like something special that he's not actually experiencing. Like he's actually experiencing fear. Like his body is affirming that by the fact that it's sweating blood. And that's honesty. Jesus is being honest. And in Luke 22, I think verse 42, Jesus praises, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me. Again, Jesus does not hide his fear. He brings it to the Father. And he doesn't fake courage. He doesn't sort of like, well, okay, whatever, I'm just going to walk through and do it anyway, sort of emotionless or numb. He actually just surrenders. He names his fear, and he shares his fear and experiences his fear in relationship with the Father and moves forward anyway. That's not at the expense or the downplaying of the fear. That's with the fear. That's how we define courage. One of the gifts of fear is courage. That's when my body sensation of danger comes online. I connect it with my head to get some cognitive processing going on that develops into wisdom, and then choosing to continue moving forward. That's the act of courage. It's not the absence of fear. It's the presence of fear moving forward. Scripture doesn't say if you're afraid. It says when. And that's, I'm thinking of Psalm 56, verse 3. When I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. And here's what you have to remember about that. Fear invites us into dependency. It's another signal that says, I need relationship. It's not an enemy or a problem that we have to get rid of or to be conquered. Rather, it's a gift, again, that leads us into relationship, just like each of the feelings. So I want to walk through some triggers that men typically experience around the idea of fear. When we feel fear, one of the things I want to do is do some digging and ask, well, where's that actually coming from? So here are some 5 categories that I think that fear, especially for men, can come up. Number 1 is money. Oftentimes men, we feel this burden, and it's a good burden to feel that, especially if you're married or you have a family, but like that weight, we can oftentimes feel like that's just all on us. I'm not saying it is, but it can feel that way. And we start asking questions like, what if I can't provide? What if I lose it all? What if I screw up? What if I can't hold down a job? What if I can't advance in my career? And then we don't have money. And if we don't have money, then we can't feed our families, and every way that can sort of spiral out of control. And then it becomes about treating money like a commodity. And if I don't have it, well, what am I willing to risk or to sacrifice to get it? And that way, that's an exaggerated way that our fear can drive us to pursue money in an unhealthy way, or to pursue performance at a job in an unhealthy way. So if you're listening to this, maybe take a moment and consider your own relationship with money. What's your motivation for pursuing it? Is it fear-based? It's worth paying attention to. Number 2 is relationships. We often pursue relationships out of exaggerated fear, and we start asking questions like, what if this person really knew me? If they really knew all of my crap, especially if you've downloaded this guide, you're probably thinking about this in the context of a pornography addiction or problematic pornography use. And you could be asking the question, well, what if my spouse knows? What if my community knows? What if other people find this out about me? Will I get hurt? Will they reject me? Will they not want me to be in community or in relationship with them anymore? That's a real fear. And we don't get through that by ignoring the fear. We get through it by feeling it on purpose. And that's an easy one it's not easy to do, but the solution is easy. We just have to own what we're actually feeling. Just name that I am feeling afraid and say it out loud to somebody else. I'm afraid that if blank will happen. When you do that, you give other people the opportunity to show up and really bless you and care for you. And that's what happened in Gethsemane the night before Jesus was arrested. Jesus trusted God the Father with that reality. I'm afraid, God, if there's any other way, take this cup from me. And then again, God is present with him in the pain. He doesn't leave him. He says, okay, let's do this. I'm with you. Number 3 is parenting. Maybe you felt this way. I actually don't know what I'm doing. I've read some good parenting books and I've got a good idea of how things work. But sometimes I feel like I just don't know what I'm doing because one thing works one day and then the next day it's like my kids have never done this before. They've never heard us talk about this or this thing before. And it'll drive you a little crazy. So even as you're reflecting on your own parenting, do you parent out of fear? How do you parent differently when you are afraid and you can't name it? I know for me, when my kids are going crazy and I don't feel like I've got any real sense of control, again, my shoulders start creeping up trying to high-five my earlobes. And that's a easy way for me to notice, okay, I'm tense and I'm experiencing stress right now. What am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that if my kids don't get their hands wiped before they get up from the table, they will run through the house with dirty hands and touch everything that is not easily cleanable. And that's a fear for me. So one way that I can do that is by being proactive, not in an exaggerated way where the house has to be sterile, spotless clean every time, and not in the opposite way where I have to bolt them into their chairs. But it's where's the middle ground of how do I communicate this honestly with my kids? Hey kids, I'm afraid that if you get up and you're not attentive to your hands being clean, you could just needlessly rub chocolate or peanut butter all over the couch or the walls or something. So just reminding them gently, when we are finished eating, we wipe our hands. And that's easy, quick, gets the job done. So think about how fear shows up for you in your parenting. What about when you're thinking about how you discipline your kids? Is fear a part of that? Is fear your motivator? If I don't discipline my kids in this way, they will turn out to be crazies. I'll spoil them. They'll be little degenerates or maybe big degenerates when they grow up. That's all real. And we don't get through that by ignoring it or exaggerating it or diminishing it, but staying present with it and inviting help into that. If you're not sure, there are 100 parenting podcasts out there. There are parenting coaches. You can talk to your spouse. There are 100 great books I'm happy to recommend. But the idea is that you're in control of your own emotions. You're in control of your own response to it. So you have to own that. Number 4, leadership. If you are a pastor or a leader in some capacity at your job or your home, something like that, there's some fear that comes from that, especially with men, because it almost feels like you're supposed to have the answers for everything all the time. And what if you don't? What if you feel like you're a fraud? The idea of imposter syndrome can come in here because I know a lot of guys struggle with that too. And you have to get curious about your leadership style. Do I lead out of fear? Or am I leading out of... what I'm getting at, what I didn't say a second ago, is this verse in Scripture where it says that the Bible says that God has given us not a spirit of fear, but of one of discipline, power, self-control, or something like that. The idea is that if you approach things with a spirit of fear, if we ignore our fear, don't attend to it properly, we will exaggerate that fear and react rather than respond. Or we will diminish our sense of fear and react rather than respond. And this is particularly harmful if you're in a leadership position and you are unaware of what fear feels like in your body in a given circumstance. Maybe your employees or your team aren't following through on what you asked them to do, and you're afraid that this isn't going to get done. We're not going to hit our numbers. and then you could, spiral out of control from there. Rather than saying, hey, team, I'm noticing this thing didn't get done, and I'm afraid that if we don't attend to this and put more energy and focus on this, this could get out of control, and it could lead to like this negative outcome in our business or whatever that looks like. But you have to own what you're afraid of. And number 5 is the idea of surrender. And this is in our relationship with God. And how this could play out is something like this. If I stop trying to control everything in my life, will God actually come through? Because there's this idea that we exaggerate trying to clean ourselves up or be right in our own capacity so that God will love us and accept us and show up for us. Again, one of the things I used to think is that if I didn't perform or if I wasn't being a good Christian, that God was going to give me a flat tire on my way to work, or, I'd come home from work and my wife would be mad at me for no real good reason. And like, I thought all these things were like God was punishing me for not living up to his standard, when like that's the opposite of the gospel. God doesn't do that. If we're in Christ, Jesus took our punishment for not living up to that standard. But he did live up to the standard, which is why the punishment mattered, or which is why it mattered that he took that punishment, not us. What I'm getting at is that we have to own our position in this. And if we will say, God, my role in this isn't to perfect it or to exaggerate it, a form of control over it. Rather, it's to step up and participate with it. That takes the weight of it off. That takes well, what if I don't perform? Okay, good. Jesus has you covered. What if I do? Well, great. Then I'm honoring God and blessing other people in my life. So the idea of surrender. So I would encourage you to write maybe some of those things down and even reflect in your own story. How do I respond to these specific 5 triggers in my life? Here's some unhelpful ways that I think that we can cope with fear. And this is typically how we end up in the impairment of fear, which is stress or anxiety. One is control. When we can get really rigid with our schedules, we can over prep, we can dominate conversations, or just try to like rein everything about life in. When we exaggerate this form of control, it's actually a way of just coping with the stress, not attending to the fear. Avoidance, we can push that fear down and ignore it, pretend like it's not there. I'm not really afraid. I'm a big boy. It can look like us putting off decisions, or it can actually show up like to our friends and family like we're just always busy because we're avoiding them. It can put us in a place where we are avoiding or ghosting hard conversations because we're afraid of how they'll go. I know I've certainly been guilty of that. Another one is numbing. We numb that feeling of anxiety in our bodies. And the obvious one here is porn. That's an easy way to numb that. Alcohol, doom scrolling, overworking, anything that will distract us from attending to or feeling our fear. Binging Netflix, the Netflix thing, it could be, sometimes I think instead of saying, are you still watching? It should say, are you still numbing? Are you still avoiding? Are you still pretending like you don't have something to deal with? Because it could put things back into perspective, because we're not actually watching, we're avoiding. And then the last one is over spiritualizing things. You just slap Bible verses on your fear instead of feeling it, pretending it's all good. God causes all things to work together for the good of those who love him. Yes, that's true, but that's not at the expense of you avoiding your fear when your insides are on fire. So we have to pay attention to that. And this is important because oftentimes, men, we don't call it fear. We call it stress. It's being tired. We're just in a funk. But it is fear. And honestly, it's running the show behind the curtain. So we have to pay attention to that. So here's what you got to know. Fear that you will not feel does become anxiety. Fear that you do feel can become clarity, courage, and even lead to deeper intimacy and relationships with your spouse, friends, your community, what have you. So the next thing I want to do is walk you through like a short practice to stay with it. So here's what we do. We sit, we name, and we respond. And we've done this with the other 2 emotions, so we're going to do the same thing here. You don't fight fear by getting tougher or ignoring it again, or just being like, this doesn't actually make me afraid. You face it by getting honest. So I want to give you 3 reflection questions. What fear is quietly running in the background right now? Name it. Name the fear. Be specific. Don't generalize it. Name the fear behind whatever hustle you're in, the anger, the shutdown, whatever's going on. Name the fear. Number 2, what outcome am I trying to control? Where am I gripping so tight because I don't trust how it might go if I let go? Where's the invitation to trust? And then number 3, what does trust actually look like here? In this relationship, in this decision, in this season, what can trust actually look like if I choose that? So here's the practice. I want you to sit still for 5 minutes. Take some deep breaths, feel your body. Don't really try to fix anything. Do the body scan like we talked about. Feel from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes and just own it. Notice it. Name what you're feeling. Name it out loud. You can write it down. Something like this. I'm afraid of blank. I'm afraid that blank. But I am not alone. I am not powerless. I choose to trust even when I can't see the outcome. That actually is the definition of faith. Sometimes I interchange trust and faith because they're sort of getting at the same idea. And here's a short prayer I think that you can pray in conjunction with this. Father, I don't want to keep pretending I'm not afraid. I don't want to keep running from fear or bowing down to it. Show me how to walk with courage, not because I'm strong, but because I trust you more than I trust my fear. I want to follow you not just when I feel safe, but especially when I don't. So, again, to wrap this up, here's the final thought. Fear is a clue. It's not a cage. It's a signal. It's telling you something about yourself. Again, from the Voice of the Heart book, fear is one of the most truthful emotions that we can feel because it tells us that we're alive. It tells us that we're human. It tells us that we need help. And it's the doorway to trust if we will start running and start listening to it. So again, the next time you feel afraid, don't shame it, don't fight it, don't numb it. Feel it, name it, bring it into relationship, and let it lead you to trust. Again, because the goal isn't to be fearless, it's to be afraid on purpose with courage. And that leads us to being fully human, which means feeling fear and choosing intimacy anyway. So I hope that was helpful to think through and talk through fear and what that looks like and what that feels like. Go back to those reflection questions, stay with it, sit in it, name it. When you make a practice of that over several days or several weeks, especially with any of these emotions, not just fear, they move from like the theoretical to the practical, meaning you will be able to experience and notice these things real time as you're experiencing them, not just when you're looking back and reflecting. And that's insanely helpful when you're in relationship with people, because if you get into a situation with your spouse and it's like, this is about to go south real quickly, you can just go, oh, well, what am I actually feeling right now? Oh, well, I think I'm afraid that if I say what I need to say out loud, then things are going to blow up. My wife's going to get mad at me. Well, maybe, but how's that going if you just hold on to it? You're going to react and say something else stupid that's still going to blow up, or you suffer silently with that thing by yourself internally. So the only real solution is to talk it out. So figure out whatever that looks like for you. And for the next episode 4, when we get into shame. So I hope you'll join me. I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you don't have the guide yet, you can download it. There's a link in the show notes. And yeah, see you next time.